Is my screen shared? Is my screen shared?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
coach.
we can see.
Yes,
All right.
we can see.
So there are 5 different domains that you have to go through. Okay, so don't don't confuse yourself with the different terms and acronyms that you see for those who are new for cybersecurity. I'm going to explain everything in basics, as I said. So the ones that are given here are the bifurcations of how the percentage has been allocated for each and every domain. And it is a must that the candidate should possess equal knowledge in all the 5 domains to get to a pass. Okay, so the passing score is anywhere between 650 to 700 out of 1,000. And it's mostly going to be 60 to 70 questions. And it will be objective based and non-adaptive based. Okay. So this is about the exam, and these are the different types of domains. We'll talk about that in detail one by one. Now, before I move to the next slide, I'm going to give you an example. Or if anyone has a question, you can feel free to cut me, okay? So based on your experience, when I'm talking about an organization, what are the two important elements for an organization to protect? What are the goals of an organization if they think that they want to protect? What is that they want to protect? I'm going with the very basics.
The
Data, okay, or the information. Then
The scope.
yeah, 2 things, 2 aspects. An organization would only want to concentrate on protecting 2 important elements in an organization. One is data or information. What is the other?
Infrastructure.
Assets or building, depends on what you call it.
Infrastructure.
Money.
No, data is
Their
right.
profits.
Application.
Application will still reside into data. Let's talk about very
Their
basic stuff.
profit.
No,
Profit, money.
no.
The building. The
Building is right, but why they want to protect the building? For what?
You said the people.
Like assets?
Fantastic. Someone said people.
Yes.
So 2 important assets for an organization. Any organization that you take. You're working in a hospital industry, you're working in a finance industry, you're working in logistics industry, aviation, oil and gas. Any organization that you take, their primary objective is to protect information and people. That's it. I've given you one line of definition of what information security is. Information security is not to protect everything in the organization. You have to pick and choose what you exactly want to protect. Can someone go on mute? I'm hearing a lot of background noise. If you guys are not talking, please. So this is basically the foundation. So how do you protect your data? How do you protect your employees? How do you protect your employees, people? Is what will be covered. I'm getting a lot of background noise. Is what I want to study in this next 5 domains. Okay. So that's basically the objective of Comptia Security Plus. Organization trying to protect their assets, which is their information. Okay. Now, when I talk about data and information, there are 2 different types. One is called as tangible data or tangible information. Another one is called as intangible data. Now, what's the difference between a tangible data and intangible data? Feel free to shoot your answers. There's no right answer or wrong answer. Feel free. What's the difference between a tangible data and intangible data?
Tangible data can be intellectual properties.
In more simpler words, for everyone to understand.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use a layman knowledge here.
Yep,
I feel
yep.
like the tangible data is the data that should be protected, that are very important to be protected. And if something happens, we want to try to retrieve, make sure there's no threat or anything to it. But intangible data that it's there, but it's not really as important. It can be public. It doesn't need to be very protected. That's what I think.
Okay, so you're close to answering that, but let me give the right answer. Tangible data or tangible information is something that a human can touch and feel. For example, you have your agreements, you have your master service agreement, you have your customer agreement, you have your license copies, you have your share market, stock market documents. You have all the physical documents that is very important for an organization that you want to protect is called as your tangible data or tangible assets. An example, your hard drive is a tangible data, is a tangible asset, something that you can touch, something you can feel. Intangible data or intangible information is the electronically stored information on your hard drive. Not just on your hard drive, it can be on a tape, it can be on a storage. Basically, the binary values of your information that's been stored in different locations. So tangible data is something you physically have to protect, like your hard drive. Intangible data is something that you have to logically protect. When I say logically, use of technology. Physically, you can secure all these agreements or all these important documents by means of a storage or a locker. But how do you protect electronically stored information in a hard drive or in any of those storage systems? So that's when you have to start applying those controls. For example, giving users the access, giving users the right access, denying users who do not have the permissions, electing and selecting the appropriate job roles for whoever is going to have the access. In an organization, everyone will not have the same equivalent rights and permissions to access the data. That's why you have your job description. That's why you have your roles and responsibilities. So based on the job description, based on the roles and responsibilities, you start deriving the authorization levels. Authorization levels are nothing but the privileges that a subject or an employee would have on the data. So you need to have policies in place. You need to have some standards in place. You need to have some framework in place for you to understand how do you want to assign those authorization levels for accessing this data. Okay, so that's the basic of organization goals, is basically to protect information and people, and the information is categorized into tangible and intangible. Tangible is something that you can physically secure. Intangible is something that you have to use technology to secure the data. Now, every organization, as I said, will have some security goals. They blindly cannot start protecting every aspects of the organization. The security goals for every organization is primarily called as CIA. You want to protect your data and you want to protect your employees for the want of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So these three are the basics of how you want to protect. This is what you want to protect, and this is how we want to protect. This will further branch out into subcategories. Now, what is confidentiality? Confidentiality is a term that is used where data or information can only be used by the authorized personnel. This data cannot be given across everyone in the organization. They need to have their roles and responsibilities. Any data that's been read or accessed by an unauthorized person, which means there is a data disclosure event that has happened. Data disclosure is about a data that's being read or written by an unauthorized person. What is integrity? Integrity is a data that is not being altered, or it is staying consistent across different locations. Let's take an example. I have an asset inventory, and the asset inventory says that my organization has 170 laptops. I have Bob to go out and physically verify how many laptops I have. And when he goes and physically counts, he says, there are 172 laptops, but my information on my database, it says 170 laptops. This is not integrity. Integrity is the consistency of data. So which means there is a mismatch in the data. Either this is right or this is right. So consistency of data across multiple locations is what is integrity, and writing authorized entries into data is also the goal of an integrity. Just because I have right access to my profile, okay, my profile, I have right access. I cannot just like that change my name to some short form. I cannot write my name, which is Mahesh, like MH. I cannot write. This is not as per the integrity, right? So I have to write what I have to write based on the policy. I cannot go just like that, go change the data. So writing or modifying authorized changes is also a goal of integrity. Availability, as you know, these technology, your data, or your employees should always be available when there is a need. I have a HR employee system application that is running in my organization. I have close to 1,000 employees, and all of a sudden this HR application server has crashed. And it's not coming up for the last 24 hours. Employees are suffering because they're not able to download their payslips. They're not able to download some important documents. So this is not the scope of your availability. Availability is giving you the assurance, giving the employees the assurance, giving your customers the assurance that whatever I support will have an SLA of 99% uptime, depending upon how much you are paid for the customer. Your uptime percentage will increase or decrease. Because the more uptime, it's going to be more expenses on your infrastructure, right? So confidentiality, integrity, and availability are three major goals, which will further be branching out, okay, into subcategories. Now there are three categories on how to protect your CI: physical, technical, and administrative. Remember this as P, T, and A. Now, physical aspects of how you want to protect your employees, how you want to protect your data, or the want of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, there are many. For example, an organization will have gates, an organization will have fences, an organization will have security guards, an organization will have highly secured doors, right? All these are physical aspects of how you want to protect your three elements, right? By the use of technology, how do you protect? Very simple. You're going to use your firewalls, you're going to use your encryption, you're going to use your hashing. You're going to use your identity and access management. You're going to use backup. You're going to use logs. All these are controlled technically. Administratively, how will you cover? How will you protect? Yes, You have your NDA signed, mostly agreements. You have your background verification for employees. You have your job description for your employees. You have your appraisal system, annual appraisal system for your employees. You have your insurances. Anything that is pen and paper, anything that is on documents is basically administrative controls. Your training is also how you train your employees. Awareness campaigns for your employees. All these are administrative. So this is what is going to
We
bring.
moved that a little too fast. Can you go over the admin again, please?
Sorry, which one?
You go over the admin again. You went over that bit fast for me, sorry.
Admin.
Mhm.
Okay. Administrative controls or administrative aspects of how you want to protect information is basically involvement of agreements, non-disclosure agreement, your appointment order, your background verification, your job description, your annual appraisal system, your insurances, anything that is touching upon HR related activities are administrative efforts to protect an organization. For example, some organization have a bond with the employees. Hey, you're going to sign up 2 years with me as an employee. And midway, you should not look up for a job somewhere else. So these are all going to be administrative type of how we want to protect your information. Correct? And every organization will have their own training department, will conduct periodic trainings for employees in ensuring how they educate the employees and ensure the importance of how the employee should behave when it comes to protecting the data. Similarly, awareness campaigns. All these will come under administrative. So I repeat, physical aspects is basically the physical aspects of a building. Using technology, how we protect, and using administrative, how we protect. So just to summarize, an organization would only want to protect two different assets for the want of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And they're going to use tools like physical, technical, and administrative. So we're going to branch out slowly one by one. For example, if you want to talk about gates, there are different types of gates. Type 1, type 2, type 3. If you're going to talk about doors, there are different types of doors. If you're going to talk about firewalls, there are different types of firewalls. If you're going to talk about encryption, there are different types of encryption. So this is how we are going to slowly drill down and go deeper and deeper into each of these concepts in the 5 different domains. But the objective of an organization is to only protect your data and employees. And these are all the tools that an organization would use. Every organization will use different tools. We do not know. Some might use a Cisco firewall. Some might use a Sonic Wall firewall. Some might not even use a firewall. They manage it without a firewall as well. It doesn't mean that the organization is insecure. No. They have other aspects to protect. Maybe they have very good encryption in place. They have very good physically stored hard drives in place. So every organization cannot adopt and adapt the same framework of how they want to protect the information security. This is based on their industry. This is based on their practice. It might differ. It must differ, and it will differ. So this is what I said. So you have your physical controls, you have your technical, and you have administrative. Now we have to further branch it out into different types of control methods. You have deterrent, you have preventative, you have detective, you have corrective, you have recovery, and you have compensative. Now, deterrent is something that induces fear for any trespassers or inducing any fear for an employee so that the employee does not do that. For example, you are having a highly raised fence with all those barbed wires. Anyone who wants to jump out of the wall and come forcefully inside your building will think twice because it's going to be a threat for them. Some organizations have those watch guards, and they have their dogs to watch out, right? So they're all deterrent controls. It induces a fear. Hey, what happens if I forcefully enter into the building? So some guards will also. There are some armed guards where they carry some guns and some weapons. So if I want to go trespass, I'm going to have that fear inside me. Something can happen. So if I'm being not adhering to my dress code policy in the organization, and the HR policy says if you're not adhering to the dress code policy, you will have an impact on your appraisal. So which I do not want to have. So I adhere to the policies, which means there is an element of fear that I have to adhere to these policies. Preventive is I'm having some preventive protection mechanism, citing that something can go wrong, and I do not want that to go wrong. So I'm having those I'm having those preventive elements in place so that it doesn't go wrong. For example, I have my security guards because I'm preventing someone not to trespass. When it comes to technology, I'm using my firewall because no one can bypass my firewall and inject any malicious code, right? So these are all preventive type of attributes that I want to place in my organization because I know that something could go wrong. I do not want that to happen. Detective is something has happened to my inside my organization, which I want to detect. I do not want to just sit like that. A burglar or someone has entered forcefully into my data center, or someone has forcefully entered into my bank, and they want to carry away some cash, or they want to carry away my hard drives. My preventive attributes still have not helped me, and I cannot sit like that. So what I do, I use my CCTV cameras, I use my sound alarms, I use my smoke detectors, I use my fire detectors, I use my motion sensor cameras, all these to detect and say that, hey, something is going wrong. Immediately start monitoring. Corrective is something has already gone wrong, and I want to correct that. For example, I lost a file and someone deleted a file. I want to correct that by introducing backup in my servers. Recovery is I had a major crash of my email server. It's completely crashed. It's not operating now. I need to build it from the scratch, start loading all my data, start building my operating system, start building my application, and then bring it back online. So anything that is completely crashed, I bring it from the scratch. It's going to be my recovery control. Compensating control or compensating aspects of how you want to protect your information is like your organization went through an accident, like say a fire accident, and how can you manage the expenses? How can you manage the cost? So what you do is you have your insurance to take up those costs. That's why organizations sign up with insurance, just in case if anything goes wrong, they always have the insurance to back them up financially. So there are these type of methods that you want to apply in your organization to give your organization a perfect protection mechanism. Now, these are all some examples of the different categories. If you want to take fence, it's going to be mapped under physical preventive. If you want to take encryption, it's going to be technical preventive. If you want to take audit, audit is an administrative effort, and it is going to detect, right? firewalls is going to be use of technology, and it's going to prevent. So this is just a sample of certain examples that I've given you, but this is not just restricted, but we have much more examples. Now, when an organization is adopting a combination of all these and all these, they are determined to protect the two elements of an organization, and that is called as defense in depth. Now, defense in depth is nothing but how many ever layers that you want to build to protect your information. It can be your perimeter gate. Next is going to be your biometrics. Next is going to be, let's say, your firewalls. Next is going to be your IDS or IPS. Don't worry about what IDS and IPS is. I'm going to explain that in simple terms in the coming slides, but for me, just listen. Next is going to be your antivirus. And finally, it is going to be your backup. So I'm constructing this layer to protect my information. So which means I have this many layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 layers I have. So this 5 layers is going to protect my information. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule that every organization should only have 5 layers for defense in depth. Some organization can have additional. Some organization may not even have, they only have 2 layers of defense in depth. They might have a very good strong firewall. They might have a very good strong encryption mechanism to protect the data. It doesn't mean that such organizations are weak and such organization is strong. No. It all depends upon your risk assessment. A very strong risk assessment team would exactly tell you how your defense in depth would look like. It's going to give you a blueprint of what all you want to protect. Do you all think it's a very good decision to protect all the information for an organization? Do you think it's right? An organization would want to protect all the information? All the data that it has? Do you think every organization want to protect all the data, all the information?
Yes.
Are you sure? Why would an organization want to protect all the information, all the data?
Sorry, this is Grace. So I think the reason why they will want to protect all their data is so that they don't end up creating vulnerabilities for the other very key information. Like for instance, if I feel like my security, maybe a lower cadre employee should not have some level of security or policies in place, but those same people can actually be a threat. They can serve as a threat to other key functions in the organization. I just feel like it's better to put some levels, even if it is not so deep. Like for instance, maybe we have security levels, but then everything should be protected, even to the minimum, to the barest minimum.
Okay. Do you think all the information is really required for an organization?
I feel like
Assuming
yes.
that I have 2019, 2020 log files, or I have my employee files, which are almost 15 years old. Do you think it is really required for an organization?
Well, for that one, I feel like every organization should have like their policies that they use, like the number of years that policies can live for, after which it is archived and after which it is deleted.
Exactly. So a simple answer for my question is not all the information is required and not all the information has to be protected for an organization. Because I'll tell you why. I have 2 GB of data and I don't know what this data is. And for me to protect this is going to cost $100K. On the other hand, the same 2 GB of data, someone has did some kind of analysis and found out that, hey, out of 2 GB of data, 1 GB of data is only old log files, which are pertaining to 2020, which we do not even need. I don't know why we are still having this. So now this becomes this narrowing down for me to protect only 1 GB of data. Now the cost of protecting this is going to be 50K. Now among this 1 GB of data, further someone has did some analysis and he said, hey, this is going to be employee data, there is going to be customer data, and there is going to be technology data, something like that. So there are 3 categories. Okay, my customer data, my technology data, and my employee data. Are you going to give equal treatment to protect all these data together, or you want to prioritize which is the one that you want to protect the first?
You want to protect your employee data first.
Or your customers' data?
I think
Customers data.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, just for the sake of asking you a question I asked. So based on the policy, I think that I want to protect my customer data first and my employee data second and my technology data third. So now I have categorized it. So this is going to be my highly critical data that I have to protect, which means out of this 50K, I'm going to spend 25K to protect my customer data. And the next 15K, I'm going to use it to protect my employee data. And whatever is remaining, I'm going to protect my technology data. So this is how an organization would bifurcate what they really want to protect and start giving the treatment. So the more and more you do not identify which is important, which is not important, which really is not required for the organization, the expenditure will always go at a very high rate. If any organization does not do this analysis of what they really want to protect, they don't know what if they don't know what to protect, then they are not actually going in the right direction of information security, because they think they want to protect everything, which is realistically not required. So in order to bring down optimized cost for spending these technology or physical attributes to protect your environment, you need to do a proper risk assessment. Okay, so that's the objective of this one particular slide. And the name for it is called as data classification. So data classification is very, very important to classify the data. So for example, top secret, secret, confidential. So if it's going to be top secret, then you give high priority. You want to use a very good algorithm for cryptography, for encryption, right? So all these are the different aspects of how you want to protect and what you want to protect. Now, let's talk about what is really a threat, what is really a vulnerability, and what is really an attack, and what is a risk. Let's talk about a very simple terminology. What is a vulnerability?
vulnerabilities are weaknesses that the system can face.
Okay. Now, vulnerabilities can be only technical. Technical and logical are words that can often be interchanged and interused. So don't get confused. So whenever I say logical or technical, they both mean the same. Can vulnerabilities only be on technology? Vulnerabilities can also be physical. A weakness in your physical building is also a vulnerability. For example, I have a outdated CCTV camera, or I have a outdated fire extinguisher, which means this is a vulnerability. Or I have my wireless router, which is completely outdated. The model is outdated. So this physical device is a vulnerability from the organization. When it comes to other vulnerabilities in technology, it can be an operating system that's not patched properly, an application which is not properly remediated because there are lots of bugs, lots of vulnerabilities, lots of weaknesses, or a firewall has not been updated to the latest firmware. All these are technical aspects of vulnerabilities. Physical aspects are these. Now, we know what a vulnerability is. Now, what is a threat?
Threat is a likelihood that a vulnerability can occur. It's a likelihood that a weakness can occur.
No, and you're close, but it's not the right answer. That's okay. Keep trying.
It's most likely is that the likelihood that an attack, I believe, can
No.
occur.
Threat is an exploitation of a vulnerability.
Exploitation of a vulnerability. Can you slightly think in a different term? Threat. What is a threat?
Anything that has the
active
potential
attempt.
to cause harm.
Exactly. Threat is basically a negative event that can harm your environment. It can be a virus, it can be a fire, or it can be a very disgruntled employee who's not very happy by his recent appraisal. Okay? Now, what is a threat agent? Or what do you say, threat agent or attack vector? All these are common terminologies. A threat agent or an attack vector is an element that could cause a threat. For example, a cigar lighter close to an electrical box, or a virus, right? All these are threat agents that can potentially cause a danger to the threat, which can exploit the weakness in your system. Okay. Now, next comes your risk. Risk is the probability the threat agent exploiting the vulnerability and causing the threat. It's just the probability or the likelihood. It can happen or it cannot happen. It can happen or it cannot happen. It cannot happen because you already had some identification in place to prevent it. It could happen because you do not have any protection mechanism at all. So there are lots and lots of possibilities that this risk can materialize because you do not have any protection mechanism. So what really exists in your environment is there is definitely vulnerabilities for sure. Every day, new and new vulnerabilities are being exposed to the world. So you might think that you ran a vulnerability assessment today and tomorrow you think that your environment is safe. No. Every day, new vulnerabilities are being exploited. So all these are going to be ongoing activities like your risk assessment, your vulnerability assessment, your penetration testing. All these are going to be an ongoing activity. You cannot stop that because the environment is changing. Okay. Let's talk about white hat and black hat. The term white hat is basically used for any environment as an authorized attacker, which means you're hiring a white hat and asking him to conduct any simulation on how secure your environment is. Now you have built your policies, you have put in practices, your defense in depth, you have placed all your controls, you have placed your firewall, you have placed your encryption, you placed your security, you placed your fences, all that is good. But how do you want to really test whether this is really working or not? One is by means of carrying out audit. But audit is not testing. Audit is a process, whether you have everything as per the policy, as per the process. But it is not testing. Testing is something that you want to test like a real time. For example, if there is a terrorist attack, how do you want to safely come out of the organization? If there is a fire, how do you safely want to come out of the building? These are something that you need to test, you need to simulate. So if you're hiring a white hat, which means he is authorized to conduct those tests. So you're going to sign some kind of agreement saying that there's going to be a non-disclosure agreement. Whatever you test is going to stay with you, and it's not going to go outside the organization. On the other hand, black hats are basically the hackers. They're not authorized to conduct any simulations on your environment. So black hats are basically the hackers or the baddies out there who do not do. They basically want to possess a lot of threats for the organization, like producing any DOS attack, finding out the loops in your environment, copying the data, selling the data outside. All these unethical practices is what they do. The biggest threat for an organization is not from external. It's basically from internal. It's called as insider threat. The biggest threat for an organization, any organization that you take, it's going to be the insider threat. You know why? I am working in the organization for 10 years. I know where my backup file is. I know what type of antivirus we are using. I know the information about my employees' salary details. I know where are the CCTVs in the floor? Where are the weak areas where it does not have CCTV? So I can exploit all that because I'm there in the organization. So insider threat is the biggest threat for the organization. And it again depends on one person to another person. If he's ethical, he will exhibit ethical practices. If it's not ethical, then you might exploit any of these. For example, if a person is resigned and leaving to a new job, he safely downloads a copy of some important docs and he bypasses all the security parameters because he knows the loopholes and he walks out. So it's going to take about 1 or 2 days for him to do that. But the same activity, if it has to be done by an external person or external hacker, he needs to first learn the lay of your network. What are the different types of defenses that you use? How can he bypass layer by layer? And then finally get into that. Maybe it can take about 2 to 3 weeks, but by the time you're detective, you're preventive, you're corrective, something might alert you, and it cannot be. This cannot be practically possible. But with insider threat, there are high risks than your external threats. Okay. And another example of your insider threat is also something called as shadow IT. Does anyone know what shadow IT is? What is a shadow IT? Any guess? Okay. Now, in an organization, you have your centralized information technology that provides you support for backup, provides you support for giving you laptops, provide support for creating file shares, all that. Now, there is one division or some business unit, and there are 100 employees, and they find it very difficult to raise a ticket and get a response from the IT team whenever they want to create any shares, a network share, where they want to store all the files. Since there is a lot of bitter experiences with the IT team not providing them prompt responses, one of the guy, Alan, says that, hey, why can't we manage all the shares by ourselves? Because there are lots of cloud providers who is giving storage. Like, for example, Dropbox. Now, Dropbox gives you certain MB free, certain GB free. So now Alan tells his team, 4 of you, create a Dropbox because it's very difficult for us to coordinate with the IT team for file shares. They're taking a lot of times and it's becoming a mess. Let's have our own file share in Dropbox. Now, this will completely get unnoticed by a team that is monitoring data. So this is called a shadow IT. Shadow IT is their own business unit helping themselves for technology needs. So if there are any confidential files in the Dropbox, tomorrow someone hacks Dropbox, there is a compromise on Dropbox. All these important files will be exfiltrated and sold. Not only that, it's going to have a huge financial impact and a reputation impact for the organization because one is IT failed to monitor that they are uploading and downloading files in their own. Second, the governance model itself has failed because they should be known as monitored the shadow IT because they are creating their own shares, they are uploading their files, downloading their files, they are creating their own permissions. That's called as shadow IT, and this is also an example of your insider threat. Okay. Now let's talk about the different types of attacks.
Sir, please, can you explain the shadow IT again, please? I'm not really clear again.
Okay. You are working in an organization where you have your IT team, who supports you for any problems, right? For example, if you have a laptop and your laptop is not working, what do? You raise a ticket and they provide you a new laptop. You agree? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Now you are raising another ticket saying that I need share folder in one of the network drive. So it takes 2 days, it takes 3 days, it takes 5 days, and you're really frustrated. So you and your team is having this experience again and again whenever you raise a request where you want to store a file, store all the files on a file server, on a storage. They are not responding to you promptly, and it is delaying your business processes. So what do? 4 of your team members are really frustrated with this process and say that let's create our own shares and folders in our G Drive or any of the cloud-based storage provider. So all your files and your folders, you want to start uploading it here and you start managing things from here. Now, you managing your own IT needs without your organization's information technology team is called as shadow IT. You want to install your own printer without the knowledge of information technology team will be a part of a shadow IT. So taking care of the information technology needs without any monitoring, without the governance of IT team is called as a shadow IT. Now, if this goes unmonitored, there's lots and lots of risks for the organization. Are you clear?
Yes, sir. Thank you very
No
much.
problem. Now let's talk about the access control attacks. Spam. You all know how frustrating and how annoying you get spam messages. So generally, 1 out of 100 emails that is flowing inside an organization is a legitimate email. Now imagine the rest of the 99 emails are mostly spam emails. So organizations fail to monitor such spam emails and they have those spam emails come inside the email server. And what they need to do is they need to build an anti-spam device and scan for all those 99 unwanted emails and not to deliver that to any of the inboxes. So spam is going to be affecting your availability per se, not your confidential, not our integrity. It's going to affect your availability. The organization goal is to always protect the C and the I and the A. But with spam, your availability is not protected because you're using unwanted bandwidth for the 99 emails to come into your network, which means you're wasting your internet resources. You're wasting your bandwidth. So it's not the right method. So which means you have to invest on a very good anti-spam device so that the anti-spam device will filter all that emails and give you only the legitimate emails. Okay. Next attack is called as your spear phishing. Now, spear phishing is basically like a targeted attack. I work in an organization called ABC.Inc. And Bob is a very familiar auditor. And Chris is a very seasoned financial advisor for the organization. So I'm hiring a black hat and say that let's get some information about the organization from Bob and from this. So we are targeting people to get certain information. That's very easy. So what the black hat will do is he will go check Bob's Facebook account, LinkedIn account, Insta account, and all that, and he will find what Bob's really is interested. Maybe Bob is interested in boxing, or he's interested in movies. Now, what this black hat will do as a next step is to send out an email to Bob, nice and fancy email saying that new movie release, free tickets for boxing match. Click on this URL. Now, Bob is really excited receiving this email because he knows that movies is his interest and football is his, boxing is his interest, and he goes and clicks this URL. So this URL has got some malicious script, and this script is now inside Bob's laptop. And this script is going to act for me as an agent to give out all the information to the black hat. Very similarly, I'm going to do the same thing with Chris. So I have both their data. I don't really have to have a physical connectivity in their laptop. The program that I run, the bot that I run on the laptop will do the trick for me. Whaling is one step ahead, where you want to target the big fishes in the organization. The CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs, right? Very similar approach. Phishing is basically stealing the credentials. You want to know the username and the passwords. Sending out emails, sending out some attractive emails, sending out, hey, Office 365 account is locked. Yesterday, you reached out to information technology help desk. They solved your tickets, and this is the status of the ticket. So it appears very legitimate, like how you receive an email. And if you do not differentiate, or if you're not giving that awareness to your employees, then they fall prey for it by clicking it. Phishing is basically an attack that is done on your voice system. Every organization have telephony, right? They have telephones in their desks. And these voice devices will have capability of dialing out international. And if you do not protect your voice boxes, if you do not protect the DPBX, there might be outsiders attacking your voice box and dialing out unnecessarily international calls without your knowledge. And you would know only when you have your invoices and you're shocked to see the bill, and then you start to protect your voice boxes. Spam is basically an attack on your SMS that you receive on your instant messages, like your SMSs. So by having Bluetooth, I pair your mobile device and start accessing all your SMSs. I get all your one-time password. I get any of your discounts that you get on your shopping, anything, and all the SMSs that you get. I'm going to have an attack on it, and I'm going to slowly collect all the data to maybe attack or steal any of the data. Salami attack is a type of attack which is called as a physical theft. What is a salami attack? I work in a supermarket and I'm the cashier. Okay, and everyone, whoever is shopping, stands in a queue, and what they do is they give me $1.90. Okay. Now in turn, I have to return them 10 cents. Now what I say is, I don't have 10 cents handy physically, so I don't have change in return. So what I do is the customer passes by without, because for him, he thinks that this is just not a very significant amount, 10 cents or 20 cents. So the cashier collects all those 10 cents and 20 cents into a box from hundreds and hundreds of customers. So I'm physically stealing not so important cash or money from different people, and I'm getting some huge amount on that given day. Maybe end of the day I might have some $20. We don't know, but this $20 is huge per day. And imagine if he's going to steal this for a month, right? So that's what is called as salami attack, stealing physically from person to person, and he does not know what really is. The same is what is called as data diddling. Data diddling is the same, but you are actually accessing someone's or adjusting the data on the application. Okay, I am a banker. Okay, and everyone logging into your own net banking portal, and you want to check what your balance is. This is how your balance will look like, or this is how the balance will look like. Now, very rarely people notice the amount or the value after the decimal points, right? So we are only concerned about what is this value. Very rarely we look at what this decimal points is. You hardly cannot even remember what your decimal points is. So what this banker will do is, instead of this 20, is going to make this as 10, not just for one account, for thousands and thousands of accounts, and put this 10 cents into his own account. So no one knows. This is just an example of what a data diddling is. Manipulating the data in your system is called as data diddling. Piggybacking, you know that unauthorized entry, someone is behind you and you do not notice. You swipe in your access card, someone walks behind you and you don't notice it. That's called as a piggybacking. Network sniffing is basically usage of tools where there are different types of tools like Wireshark or Nmap. Okay, all these tools are basically used to give out the data of how the network diagram is or network is built into the organization, so that I can plan my next attack. Basically probing. Okay. Now packet capture is basically capturing all the data and start to collect it into my storage. Now, how can I do this? It's very simple. Now, we are all in the world of Wi-Fi. Now, data is there in the air. Zoom calls that you take now, the office laptop that you work in the office is all through the Wi-Fi. It's not through a wide network. So in the air, on the air, there are lots of data which is not visible to you. Now, if I'm going to use these type of packet capture on the air, data that is on the air, I can very easily collect all the data into storage. And if these data is not encrypted or not protected, I'm going to have all the passwords of employees. That's packet capture. Packet capture is basically capturing the data and forming my own database. Network sniffing is an attack that is carried out much before, to understand the lay of the land, to understand in which are the areas I have my routers, I have my firewalls, I have my IDS, and I have my IPS, and all that. Password attacks are basically carried out on the passwords. For example, I know that my passwords are located in C directory passwords. Just giving you an example. So passwords are mostly stored in some kind of hash format, not on plain text. So there are different types of password attacks. Brute force attack. Now, what is a brute force attack? Brute force attack is I'm trying and trying with different permutation and combination. All that I know is a password can be between A to Z and 1 to 0 and with some special characters. So I have a program to run different permutation and combination with the 8-digit of passwords. And Every time I run, I get every character right. And finally, I get the password and I got the username. Okay, so these are different types of password as well. Reconnaissance attack. Now, this is a big thing. Now, reconnaissance attack is something like two countries getting into a war. They don't instantly get into a war. So what they do is they monitor and monitor and monitor. They explore, they probe, they survey, they do lots and lots of surveying. They do lots of observation. They do a lot of inspection. They do a lot of footprinting. They wait, they plan. All these are put into together is called as a reconnaissance attack. Reconnaissance attack is going to take at least 2 to 12 months and gathering all the information about the organization. Now, let me tell you something practical, what really happens. Suppose an organization says, at 10:10 a.m., my server was compromised and someone has exfiltrated the data, which is worth 1 million. And the data size is almost 2 GB. Do you think the attack was planned exactly at 10:10 a.m. and the attack was successful at 10:10 a.m.? Do you really think that's the case here? And any of the compromise, any of these incidents that you hear, read through the news, do you think that it is planned at the time and executed at the time? Do you really think that way? Is the attack instantaneous?
No, really.
What happens behind the screen? Someone has gathered all the information prior and they have perfectly timed for the most vulnerable situation. And then they have carried out the attack. Now, let me tell you one common fact. Wherever you work, regardless of the industry, regardless of how secure in your network, your environment is, I am 100% sure that there is a hacker who is already inside your network. I'm 100% sure. Wherever you work, there is one person inside your network, already there. It's just the time that he is waiting for to execute that attack, or depending upon the security aspects that you already have in your organization, this guy might get caught and he might erase all the trials and logs and events because he does not want to be caught. He might use different aspects. He might spoof an IP address. He might spoof a MAC address. But in every organization, there is one person already inside your network. So it is just the timing, it's just the vulnerable timing, or it's just the time that he waits to time that attack perfectly. An attack does not plan at 10:09 and executes at 10:10 a.m. No, these are all well planned. So that's why I'm saying your activities to protect your information should always be ongoing. The risk assessments, your antivirus, the usernames and passwords, the policies, not using an employee resigns an organization and his user account is still there. What is the use? You are not properly maintaining your administrator's account. You're not properly maintaining any of the supervisor accounts. You're not maintaining your CEO's username and password. It's very easily guessable. So all these are vulnerable areas in the organization. Okay. There is also another attack called impersonation. Impersonation is basically I'm trying to be yourself, and you do not know. I'm going to fool the security, physical security, and says, "Hey, I'm Bob. This is my ID card. My ID card is exactly lookalike of the legitimate, authentic user." So I'm acting like Bob and gaining access to the data center because I say that I am in a hurry. I know I forgot my access card. Can you please help me, security guard? The security guard would really think that I'm Bob because I'm clever in impersonating. Okay. There's another attack called typo squatting. Now, what is typo squatting? Now, www zoom.com, www.zoom.com. Do you think both are similar?
No.
What do you see the difference here is?
It's 0 and O.
Exactly.
The bottom.
So
is-
for the first look at it, anyone would go and click on this. And he thinks that this is a legitimate website, and the website will exactly be like look-alike of the real website. And he's going to give his credit card, he's going to purchase, and he's going to start subscribing. And behind the screen, someone is actually robbing all his information. So typo squatting is a look-alike website, which you do not know. It's just negligible. Like Amazon.com with Amazon with O replaced by a 0. Right? That's called as a typo squatting attack. Shoulder surfing is another attack where you are a top. You're working on something highly secret, and I just passed by, and you forgot to lock your screen, and I can read the screen, and I can read whatever is there in the content of the screen, and I'm casually giving you some conversation of your interest, and you turn around and start having that conversation going. And meanwhile, I see all the information about what's there in your screen. Some organizations use a privacy filter. Only the user of that computer will have access to the data. So this is called as a shoulder surfing. Okay. And there's also another attack called dumpster diving. Dumpster diving is basically searching any residual data in your bin, recycle bin, or any of those unwanted storages to get to that information. Now, when I say information, there are two types of information. Okay, one is called as direct info. Another one is called as indirect info. Now, what is the difference? Direct info is I have my CV or my resume, and whatever I write on my resume is going to be my direct information. My indirect information is where all my CV is stored: cloud, my USB drive, my $C temp directory, my G drive. So these are all indirect information where my information is stored. So if I get the indirect information, I am closer to getting the direct information. So remember this for your exam: indirect and direct information. So this is about the different types of attacks. Next is going to be how you define access to the data in your organization. Well, generally, in the world of technology, subject is normally called as the employee, and object is normally called as your data. Okay, so subject is basically the user, and object is basically the information. So subject is basically an active entity, and subject is basically the passive entity that provides you that information. The first and foremost step for a subject to access a data is to identify himself or identify herself. Next is your authentication, where you are proving that I am the subject by providing your display card, by displaying your passport, displaying your driving license. When it comes to logical, it's basically your password. So you're having your identification, username, and you're having your password. Authorization is the level of access that you have on the storage or you have on the files. Accountability is how securely, how ethically you use the authorization level by not copying it, by not sharing it without any permissions. Auditing is the process of periodically checking everyone's access and everyone's permissions. Issuance and enrollment are basically the activity whenever an employee joins an organization. They give them the ID cards, they take biometric access, they enroll himself for biometric and all that, right? Now, different types of password, different type of terminologies. Password complexity, you know how to make the passwords very complex. Cognitive passwords is also one of the benefits of not sharing the passwords. Cognitive passwords is basically, I forgot my password. And I have some preset questions like, what is the name of my first car? What is my favorite song? What is my pet's name? So all these are preloaded questions to the engine. And when I forget my password, it's going to prompt me to answer the preset questions, which only I know as a subject, and I will not share it with everyone. So that's called as your opinion-based or fact-based. Clipping level. Now, clipping level is nothing but how many attempts of incorrect passwords a subject can have. It can have 5 incorrect attempts. It can have 8 incorrect attempts. It all depends upon the policies that you set. Brute force attack, as I said, it's going to be trying and trying and trying. Right? There are different forms of identification. Username, digital certificate. Don't worry about what digital certificate is. I'll cover that in detail. And you also have your secure ID or token that is given to you by an organization. Other form of system identification, for example, physical address, the MAC addresses of your devices, or logical IP addresses of your organization. So authentication happens on the IP address. If the IP address is right, then you are authenticated. Then again, digital certificate from a system. All right. So this is just how your auditing generally looks like. Your audit tools looks like. And there are different types of events that is created. Security event, information event. If anyone is trying to access your CEOs or your CFO's username and password incorrectly, it will give you an error, and then you further go and start analyzing it, start investigating it. Then you get to know the date, you get to know the IP address, get to know the time, and then you see the CCTV, and you get to know who the person is. Okay. Any doubts so far? Anything that you have in mind that?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, when you talked about the direct info and the indirect info, there was something you mentioned. Was it internet surfing?
Can you please repeat the question?
I said when you talked about the direct info and indirect info.
Yeah, correct.
There was something you mentioned before you talked about the types of info. Was it about internet surfing?
No. This is completely different. I'm talking about information about a particular, how can I say? Okay, let me give you an example. Now, there are different types of classifications, okay? I have 3 boxes. And the first box is named as top secret. The second box is labeled as medium secret. And the third box is labeled as low secret. I'm going to give you the top secret key, the medium secret key, and the low secret key. Which is the box that you will first open? That you're very curious to know.
Top secrets.
Why? How? Because I'm giving you an indirect information of what the contents of the box is. Behind the screen, I would have swapped this box with this box, or swapped this box with this box. I don't know. You don't know. Just because you see that there is a top secret label on that, you are so curious to go and open this box. Now, this top secret, medium secret, or low secret, they're all indirect information, which means you're not actually accessing the data. You're trying to access the data. You're getting one step closer to the data. Direct information is the data that is written inside a file. As I said, I have my resume. All the information that I've written into my resume is going to be with the direct data. My date of birth, my salary details, my employment details, my family details, my health status, all these are going to be direct information. Direct information is where all this file is located. So if I find that this file is located in G drive, I'm slightly closer to getting the access of the database. You understand now?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So let me introduce you to another concept called oversight. Open system interconnect model. Now, if I have to explain you this, let me give you an example. You are watching a movie, okay, and you enjoy the movie, but what really happens behind the screen is something that no one thinks about. There are so many technicians, there are so many roles, jobs that involve in creating a movie. For example, you have to create a score, you have to create a music, you have to create the lighting, screenplay, direction, stunts, visualization, graphics. So many things are there. But what you're being presented here is the data, which is nothing but the movie. Very similarly, in the world of technology, what really happens behind the screen is what is the 7 layers talks about. The data first starts at the physical layer, moves to the data link layer, moves to the network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and application layer. And the application layer is where the user sees the data on his PC. Physical layer is a layer where you have your cables, you have your printers, you have your computers, all that works on the physical layer. Once you send out the data, it moves to the data link layer. The data link layer is where your LAN switches work. And this switch carries that data within your office, outside your office. That's where it moves to the network layer. And from the network layer, you have your transport layer, which transports the data to further other side of the network. The session layer is basically responsible in holding the sessions between 2 different endpoints till the transaction is completed. The presentation layer presents the data to the application that is listening. For example, you're presenting an email. So this email data will be presented to the PC to the email client. The email client can be an Outlook, something like that. So that's how it is being presented. And generally, this OSI layer is categorized broadly into 3 layers. The lower layers is going to be your hardware. The upper layers is going to be your software. And the middle layer is going to be the bridge between the hardware and the software layer. We'll talk about the different devices, right? These devices have a place in any of these layers. For example, take a firewall. Firewall always resides on the network layer. Switch always resides on the data link layer. Printers always reside on the physical layer. I'll explain you the functions of firewalls, switches, and servers in the coming slide. I'm telling you, the transport layer is basically the big protocol that is the TCP. Without TCP, no data that cannot be interchanged or exchanged between 2 different PCs. TCP is the protocol that's been elected about 3-4 decades ago, that this will be the protocol that will handle data exchange between one point and another point. Or UDP. There's a difference between TCP and UDP that I'll explain. Now let's talk about the basic technology fundamentals. Hardware is just a piece of box where you have your embedded system, where you have your CPUs, your RAMs, your storages. And without an operating system, hardware is just a dead device. Firmware is basically a term that is used where your system boots first. When you turn on your mobile device, when you turn on your television, when you turn on your laptop, your desktop, firmware is the one that gives the instructions of what next the PC or your laptop should do. Then your operating system is loaded. Software is basically an application or a software that's been written by any languages. Programmers code, they compile it, and then they give it as a product. Any product that you take is being built by coding. For example, take Zoom, that is built by few programmers. They use the code to build the product. Operating system, MS Word, PPT, whatever it is, any application that you see, they're all once upon a time, they were built by using coding practices, and then they compile, and the output is what can be being used. Okay. Trusted computing base is basically a term that is given for a device that is having a firmware, LAN capability, and CPU capability. So a box that can process data, a box that can store data, and a box that has got firmware capability is called as a trusted computing base. Servers are just a hardware, which is just a piece of hardware, and it takes the role of however you want it to configure. For example, if I'm configuring a server as a file server, it will be called as a file server. I'm configuring a server with a DHCP application. A DHCP is basically giving out IP addresses. That server will be called as a DHCP server. I'm configuring the server as an Active Directory server, so which means it picks up the name by a role that you have defined to play. Okay, and similarly, there are different types of roles that you want to apply on the servers: print servers, DNS servers, web servers. So servers is a concept. The application that you host on the servers is basically will get the name. Storage is basically the device that where you want to store your data. It can be a hard drive. It can be a storage device. Like say it's got multiple hard drives put together, like a dash box, directly attached box, we call it as, like something like this, basically to store your data. Switches. Switches are used to connect different PCs on a network. Switches have some intelligence, but it notes every PC where it is connected to which port. And based on the traffic, how PC1 wants to communicate to PC3, it holds the other traffic flow and intelligently passes the traffic from one location to another location. Switches mostly work on the LAN, and next is VLAN. Now, VLAN is a concept. In an organization, you have your HR, you have your admin team, your facilities team, and you also have your finance team. I have these many ports connected to HR PCs, admin PCs, and finance PCs. Now, I do not want anyone to accidentally access my finance PC from my HR PC. Or I do not want accidentally someone to access my HR PC from a finance PC. So what I do is I create a segment based on IP address. So here I'm going to give a different IP scheme. For admin, I'm going to give a different IP scheme. And HR, I'm going to give a different IP scheme. By default, if two different IP schemes have to talk to each other, you need a device that is called as a router. A switch will connect PCs of the same IP addresses, IP scheme. But if you have different IP schemes, for example, 10.20.20.x and 10.30.20.x, and here you have 10.40.40.x. By default, these PCs cannot talk to each other. So I'm ensuring that I'm protecting my PCs not to talk to each other. And that's why I'm creating something called as a virtualized LAN. A gateway is basically a concept that is given to any device where your traffic exists. That's it. For example, if we all live in some kind of apartments, right? There will be one exit point and one entry point. So this is what is called as a gateway. Where my data is going out, and this is going to be my last controlled port or device where it goes out to the WAN. Routers are basically devices that's going to operate on the WAN, which will take your information from one location to another location, which means over the internet or by means of any other transport. So routers are going to be mostly working on the WAN, but whereas switches will work on the LAN, carry information from one PC to another PC. Routers carry information from one location to another location. Okay. What is a firewall? Now, firewall is a protecting device for the organization which scans for all the incoming information and checks for any vulnerabilities for each and every TCP packet that it receives. There are different types of firewalls, which we'll talk in detail in the coming slides. Packet filtering firewall, stateless firewall, stateful firewall, UTM boxes. But the firewall is different from a router because router just passes the packet or exits the packet or information. But firewall scans the information for any vulnerabilities. That's the specialization of a firewall. Firewall is not a device, it's a concept. You can have a hardware firewall, you can have a software firewall, okay? Or you can also replace that with something called as an intrusion detection system or an intrusion prevention system. They're also devices that you place on your network so that any data is inspected and not going out or coming in without your permission. Okay, so any doubts so far? Any doubts so far? Anything that you want to further discuss? Maybe let's use the last 4 minutes for you guys want to discuss anything else. How do you think you want me to reduce the pace? Because this is going to be my first session. You want me to reduce the pace or increase the pace, or is there any feedback that you'd like to give, or anything that you want to share before we wind up for today?
Some messages on the chats, if you could just take a look at them at some point here.
Okay.
Hi. Do we get this like
Right.
document for you after the class?
We're talking about the